Thank you, John. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our HeartSmart presentation on simplifying nutrition and weight control. So today I'm going to be going over a heart healthy diet and then also some tips for weight management and then how to maintain weight loss long term. So what is healthy eating? Healthy eating is a pattern of food selections that provides your body with the best balance of available nutrients to maintain or improve physical and mental well-being. So by consuming a variety of nutritious foods, this is really the key to a healthy diet. And then also knowing the right number of calories for your body can help you meet your health and weight goals. So when we're building a balanced plate, we want to make half of it our non-starchy vegetables. So this will be like our leafy greens, mushrooms, cucumbers, zucchinis, are non-starchy vegetables. So then the other quarter of your plate, we're going to want to focus on our lean protein sources. So our fish, poultry, and then also plant proteins like tofu or lentils. The other quarter of our plate will be our whole grains or our starchy vegetables. So your potatoes, peas, corns, and whole grain pastas and rice, those types of foods. It's important to use our heart healthy oils like avocado or olive oil in place of saturated fats like butter and coconut oil. And then also consuming fruit for desserts can help limit our daily added sugar intake, as well as focusing on low calorie beverages like water or tea or coffee without adding sugar to those beverages. So the heart healthy diet is just a generally healthful diet pattern that really emphasizes of eating a variety of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean and unprocessed proteins, as well as plant proteins, fish and seafood, and then low fat or non-fat dairy products, liquid and non-tropical vegetable oils, minimizing processed foods and intake of added sugar, and then also preparing foods with little or no salt, as well as limiting our alcohol intake. So the Mediterranean diet is not necessarily eating, tzatziki, pita bread, spanakopita, those types of foods, but it's actually just a way of eating that really emphasizes plant-based foods and heart-healthy fats, while limiting saturated fats, excess sodium, and added sugars in the diet. And I also want to touch on alcohol because it's important for many reasons to limit it. So excessive alcohol is not only linked to elevated blood pressure and heart disease and stroke, but it also adds additional calories, which can hinder your goals for weight loss and just impact your overall health. So moderate drinking is defined as an average of 1 drink per day for women or 2 drinks per day for men. And then a standard drink would either be 12 ounces of beer, 4 ounces of wine, or 1.5 ounces of an 80 proof spirit. So the first nutrient that I want to touch on is sodium. So per the FDA, a majority of the sodium consumed comes from processed or packaged or prepared foods, not actually from the table salt that we add to our foods when we're cooking or eating it. So this makes it difficult for consumers to control the amount of sodium consumed in the diet. So on average, Americans consume about 3,400 milligrams of sodium per day, which is about 50% more than the 2,300 milligram limit recommended by federal guidelines for anyone who's 14 years old and older. And then in addition to this, most children and adolescents eat more sodium than recommended. So the impact of this is it can raise our blood pressure, which is also a major risk factor for heart disease and stroke, which are 2 of the leading causes of death in the US. So sodium is added to food for a couple of different reasons. So it's an additive which controls microbial growth, which causes food to spoil and foodborne illnesses. Now it's also used to improve flavor and texture of foods, and then also used for baking and curing meats. So The Salty Six is a list by the American Heart Association of the most popular foods that add high levels of sodium to the diet. So this includes breads and rolls, pizza, sandwiches, cold cuts and cured meats, soups, and burritos and tacos. So how can we lower sodium in the diet? So you're going to have the most control when you're eating at home and preparing your own meals, and using whole foods, using herbs and spices and salt-free seasoning blends to season your foods. The use of acidic juices like lemon, lime, and vinegars can add flavors and brighten up the dish without needing to add additional sodium. Using our food labels to choose low sodium food options. So looking for those that have less than 140 milligrams per serving, or that are less than 12% of the daily value per serving. And then again, choosing fresh instead of processed foods when you can. So fresh fruits and vegetables or frozen vegetables that don't have any added sauces or seasonings. And then fresh or frozen seafood, poultry, and meats. So next is fats. So there's going to be three main types of fats in our diet. So we have unsaturated fats, saturated fats, and trans fats. So all fats are going to provide calories or energy for the body. They also help us to absorb certain vitamins from fruits and vegetables. And then they also support many of our other body processes. So unsaturated fats can be broken down further into two groups. So those are monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. So these are our heart healthy fats that can help us maintain healthy cholesterol levels. So our saturated and trans fats are going to be our unhealthy fats. So these are the ones that are going to raise our bad cholesterol in the blood. And when we have elevated cholesterol levels, this can increase our risk of stroke, heart attack, or vascular dementia. So most Americans exceed the recommended limits for saturated fat in the diet, but there is evidence that suggests that when using unsaturated fats in place of these saturated fats in the diet within recommended levels, it can reduce the levels of total cholesterol and bad cholesterol, which is associated with a reduced risk of developing cardiovascular disease. And then in addition to cardiovascular health, monitoring daily intake of fats can also help with weight control. So 1 gram of fat is equal to 9 calories, which is much more than carbohydrates and protein, which are only 4 calories per gram. So when we consume a diet high in fat, we're likely consuming more calories than we intend to. So again, saturated and trans fats are going to be our unhealthy fats, and they're typically going to be solid at room temperature. So as I mentioned, they're going to increase our bad cholesterol or your LDL cholesterol in the blood. And then they're mostly found in animal-based foods and full-fat dairy products. And then your tropical oils like coconut and palm oil. So the body actually makes all the saturated fats that it needs. So it's not necessary that we get this from the foods that we eat. And the dietary guidelines for Americans recommend that we consume less than 10% of calories per day from saturated fats. And then trans fats, which are partially hydrogenated oils, are typically found in commercial baked goods, shortenings, and fried foods. So these ones can actually raise your bad cholesterol and lower your good cholesterol. So these intake of these fats are associated with a greater risk of heart disease. So if a food contains less than 0.5 grams of trans fat per serving, the food label can say that there's no trans fat in these foods. So if you're eating, a bunch of foods that have 0.5 grams per serving, it can kind of add up quickly. So if you're looking on the food label and you see an ingredient that says partially hydrogenated oil, this will be an indicator that the food is processed with these trans fats. So our unsaturated fats, as I mentioned, can be broken down to monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. And they're found in higher proportions in our plants and seafoods. And these are going to be liquid at room temperature as oils. So both can help reduce bad cholesterol levels in your body. So monounsaturated fats are your avocados, olives, nuts like almonds, peanuts, pecans, and then some vegetable oils. So olive oil, canola oil, peanut, and safflower oil. And then your polyunsaturated fats are rich in essential fatty acids that our body needs that we cannot make. So those will be your omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. So that can be found in your fatty fish and nuts like flax seeds, chia seeds, and walnuts. And then omega-6 you can get from corn oil, cottonseed, soybean, and sunflower oils. And then sugars. So added sugars differ from naturally occurring sugars. So naturally occurring sugars are the ones that are found in fruit and milk, versus added sugars are like syrups that are added to foods when they're being processed or prepared. So when you're reading the ingredient list on a food label, again, you can look for brown sugar, cane sugar, corn sugar, high fructose corn syrup, honey, maltose, maple syrup, sucrose. Those will be your added sugars. So added sugars contribute calories to your diets, but no essential nutrients. So eating and drinking excessive sugars can also make it difficult to achieve a healthy eating pattern without taking in too many calories. And then too much added sugar in the diet can also lead to chronic conditions such as type 2 diabetes and heart disease. In addition to this, excess sugar gets stored in the liver as glycogen, or it's converted into fatty acids, which circulate throughout the body and then eventually gets stored as fat. So using food labels, as I mentioned, is a really good way to kind of understand and estimate, how much calories we're getting per day, how much fats and sugar and sodium we're taking in as well. So it's required for most prepared foods, such as bread, cereals, frozen foods, snacks, and drinks. But nutrition labeling for raw produce, like your fruits and veggies, and then fish is voluntary. Reading food labels, like I said, can kind of help you gauge how much of your macronutrients you're consuming, which are your energy. And then also, the ones that we kind of want to monitor. So saturated fats and sodium and sugar. So the first step is looking at the serving size on the food label. This is going to tell you how much of the product the information on the label is based on. So for example, like a can of soup really is 2 servings because the serving size is half a can. So if you consume the whole can, it's okay, but it's just important to note that if you consume more than that half a can, then you're consuming double the amount of food on the label. So from here, you can kind of work your way down to the calories, fats, carbs, sodium, and protein. Again, fat, saturated fat, sodium, and added sugars are all associated with adverse health effects. And then we generally consume more of these than what's recommended by the FDA in America. And then again, added sugars differ from the total sugars on the nutrition label. So that's going to be anything that's added during processing. So your sugars, table sugars, honey, syrups, and then diets high in calories from added sugars can make it difficult to meet our recommended levels of important nutrients while staying in our calorie limit. So this kind of looks at popular diets that compared weight loss at 6 months and weight loss at a year. So at 6 months, there's some big differences across the different diets, but then if you look at a year's difference, the differences are minor and the rankings across the different diets change. So this kind of points out that diets are typically hard to maintain. So for example, those who participated in the Atkins diet, which is a low carb diet, lost 22 pounds within the first 6 months, but gained back 8 in the next 6 months. So it, it, it shows that the particular diet you choose is not as important than choosing one that you can actually stick to. So for weight management, instead of focusing on strict parameters of a specific diet, focus on these ways to kind of promote health in your diet. So you can eat more and weigh less by eating fewer calories from high calorie foods. So like eating foods high in fat and added sugar, and swapping those for low calorie foods that will fill you up. So these foods in general will contain a lot of water and are high in fiber. So think like vegetables and your protein foods. Look at your beverages. So you may find that you're consuming extra calories in beverages alone that you have each day. So choosing low calorie beverages over sugary drinks can help you reduce the amount of calories consumed daily and prevent heart disease, diabetes, and other chronic conditions. Per the CDC guideline, it's recommended that people limit their intake of added sugar to less than 10% of their total daily calories. So based on a 2,000 calorie diet, no more than 200 calories or 50 grams should come from added sugar. So for reference, a 12-ounce regular soda has more than 10 teaspoons of added sugar in it, which is equal to 150 calories. In addition to this, the CDC found that about 30% of Americans 2 and older drink high amounts of added sugar daily. And then look at your portion sizes. So your portion sizes can also lead to increased calorie intake and over consuming. So over the years, portion sizes have increased, leading people to unintentionally consume more calories and add a significant excess calories when eating high calorie foods. So like I mentioned, when building your balanced plate with your protein, your veggies, and your whole grains, we want to leave room around the edges instead of piling the plate full of food. Now, it's okay to go for seconds if you find you're still hungry after eating, but try and give yourself time and wait about 20 minutes after eating to see if you actually need more food, because it generally takes about 20 minutes to kind of realize we're satiated from our meal. And then on the other hand, when you're dining out, don't feel like you have to finish the entire plate. You know, it's okay to ask your server for a box and put half your food away, so you don't feel compelled to eat it all in one sitting and then end up feeling, overly stuffed by the end of the meal. And then also use more fruits and vegetables paired with whole grains, choose lean protein sources and nuts and beans as a safe and healthy way to lose weight or maintain it. And then, consuming a diet that's rich in fruits and vegetables may reduce chronic conditions and some cancers. So energy needs differ for everybody and depend on multiple factors. So you have to look at your age, your gender, your weight, and your activity level. The amount of energy that we need to keep the body functioning in a resting, awake and fasting state is called resting metabolic rate. So it varies due to the following influences. So that's your resting metabolism, your physical activity level, and the thermic effect of food. And the thermic effect of food is just the amount of energy it takes for our bodies to metabolize or digest the foods that we eat. So you can use a calorie calculator to determine an estimate of how many calories you need daily. It's not going to be exact. For that, you need something called an indirect calorimeter, which are kind of expensive and hard to come by. So you can use these calorie calculators to just get, kind of an estimated number of how many calories you need daily, based on your body's RMR and your activity level. So that way, if you're using a food log, you can kind of, see how much food and beverages you're consuming daily and see if it's, falling within that daily estimate of how much energy you actually need. So energy balance is as simple as energy in equals energy out. So balancing energy intake, so the food we eat, with energy output, so RMR, exercise, the digesting of food, is one of the key components of maintaining health and well-being. So if insufficient food is eaten, there's a negative energy balance, which results in weight loss. But if too much food is eaten, there's a positive energy balance, and this excess energy can be stored as body fat, which will result in weight gain. So an energy imbalance is created when our energy intake is increased and our expended energy is decreased. So eating more palatable foods, dining out more frequently, consuming larger portions, drinking sugar sweetened beverages or beverages with excess calories, and also food marketing are all causes of increased energy intake. Whereas, more sedentary lifestyle, watching more TV, exercising less access to safe walking and biking routes, and then drive-through restaurants is a cause of our decreased energy expenditure. So we want to, manage our weight with physical activity. Regular physical activity can help you keep off weight, the weight that you lose, and also helps with cardiovascular fitness. So if it's hard for you to schedule in regular activity, you can look at ways to build in activity throughout your daily routine. So that can be, something as simple as stretching first thing in the morning for 5 minutes when you wake up. If you have a phone call, maybe get up, stand, go for a walk while you do it. Set a timer and stand up and stretch every 30 minutes at work to kind of break up those long stretches of sitting. And then taking the stairs instead of the elevator, or parking further away just to get in some extra steps, on your way in and on your way out of work. And ideally, you want to spread your activity throughout the week. So the recommendation is to aim for about 150 minutes of moderate physical activity, or 75 minutes of vigorous physical activity, or a combination of both per week. So kind of break it down for what works best for you. Try to aim for 30 minutes of activity a day if you can. And then know how many calories you should be eating and drinking to maintain your weight. So nutrition and calorie information on the food label is typically based on a 2,000 calorie per day diet. So you may need more or less depending on your level of physical activity, your age, and your gender as well. And you can increase the amount of and intensity of your physical activity to burn more calories. So for long-term weight loss, you want to focus on your nutrition. So again, knowing what your energy needs are and focusing on consuming low calorie and fiber containing foods to fill you up and boost your nutrition. Support systems are also very effective during weight loss and can contribute to weight maintenance. The Mayo Clinic suggests that having friends or family members who support your healthy eating and exercise goals is important for long-term weight loss success. Research indicates that keeping a food journal can be an effective tool to help change the behavior. So recording what you're eating and how it's prepared and how much you're eating, as well as when you're eating, can also help identify potentially problematic times, like if you're a late night snacker. Scheduling physical activity so that you stick to your plan and you can monitor your goals. And then planning your meals in advance is also a great way to kind of save you from having to stop at a drive-through or making a poor choice after a long day at work. And then, you can track your progress by weighing yourself, but we don't want to do that more than once a week. And then also, I think it's important to note that if you regularly strength train, your weight may not be changing, but you may be losing fat and gaining muscle. So waist measurements or progress photos can be another great way to track your progress as well. And And then I just want to kind of finish off with, I feel like the true key to long-term success with weight management is creating a sustainable health promoting behaviors. So if you're following a strict diet and exercise regimen that, you couldn't follow if you had to travel for work or in the event of something happening with family and your life, then this isn't something that's sustainable. So when we're creating these health promoting behavior changes, we want to be focusing on doing things that we can continue over time. And not only that, but kind of build on. And it shouldn't feel like a chore that you have to cheat on and end up quitting altogether. So, when you're making these goals, it's important to start small and aim for meeting one realistic goal at a time versus setting a bunch of different ones. Because if you start too big, it's easier to fail right off the bat and give up versus, starting small and continuing to build is something that, you can continue to do for the rest of your life. And if it's not something that you can see doing for the rest of your life, then it probably isn't realistic. So thank you guys for joining this afternoon. Does anybody have any questions before we go?
Thank you, Olivia. I wanted to, as you guys type in or think of your questions, I wanted to remind everybody that we do offer nutrition counseling to employees. So if you have specific questions about your diet as it relates to your health and well-being, I put a scheduling link in the chat that's available to you. And again, this will also share with each of you via email. So if you want to use that as an opportunity to talk individually with somebody, by all means, we encourage you to do so. And as Olivia said, the best nutrition approach is the one you can sustain. And I always like to add that it's the one that you can get the results you want while still liking your life. So if you are embarking upon plans that are highly restrictive, there's a good chance you're going to go off that plan. So try to find something where you're targeting a few key behaviors, not trying to take on too much at one time, but you can still like your life. And that is going to lead to long-term success. Because as you saw early on, we look at the data regarding a lot of popular weight loss programs like Weight Watchers, Atkins, Nutrisystem, and such. Everyone loses weight on them. But that weight loss starts to plateau and the compliance with that program starts to drop off if it's heavily restrictive from what your usual eating patterns are. So Olivia, looks like you have a question there in the chat. I'll let you answer.
Couldn't get myself off mute. Okay, so when trying to lose weight, how should one approach carbs? So there's really no set macronutrient balance that's going to lead to weight loss. Again, it's kind of energy in versus energy out. You want to kind of stay away from those added sugars, especially the ones in like sugary beverages, and your snack foods and stuff like that, because those are associated with adverse health effects. So by focusing on consuming a variety of foods, really amping up your vegetable and your choosing fruit intake as well instead of those high sugar foods, those are going to have long-term benefits on your health in general. So I don't want to say focus too much on like carbs to fat to protein ratio, as much as just kind of, focusing on the types of foods you're eating. So eating those whole foods, your vegetables, roots, your lean proteins, instead of like those snack foods and sugar beverages, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just to add on to that, there's nothing really problematic with carbs, but just to build on what Olivia was saying, take a look at the types of carbs that you typically are selecting. If there are a lot of heavily refined carbs like white breads and regular pasta and white rice, things that lack the dietary fiber that can naturally fill us up, that's often where I'll try to encourage people to look at making some changes if it works for them.
Right. Added sugar is 0. I mean, 50 grams is like the max you can have. And also if you're, cutting your sugar out completely, is that sustainable for you long term? You have to look at sustainability, like I mentioned, and like John mentioned as well. So is it physically possible for you to never eat your favorite foods again? Because that's not really, following a sustainable diet. So all foods should fit ideally. It's about what you do totally over time versus what you do, on a daily basis. So it's okay to have your favorite foods now and again. We just don't want to be eating in excess of those foods all the time. Oops. Okay.
So Earl, I got another good question. I can step in and answer that. In terms of persons who are dealing with pre-diabetes and staying away from fruit, I think the recommended strategy is, try to choose fruit in its whole form. So whether it's cut up fruit, frozen fruit, or fresh fruit versus a fruit juice would probably be the best strategy. But I'd also suggest that you sit down one-on-one with a dietitian and kind of go over some of the other parameters, because when we're dealing with pre-diabetes, it's not just about specific food categories like carbs and like fruit, but also total calorie intake. But yeah, I hope that answers your question as far as fruit goes. I've always said that, if you can, eat the rainbow, and if that reminds you of a Skittles commercial, you're probably doing it wrong. So try to eat the rainbow in terms of fruits and vegetables and go from there. So thank you again, Olivia. I would encourage you each to book an appointment. Olivia will be covering all of our nutrition counseling sessions in the interim. And, again, look for more details to come out via this. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now, but we'll answer any other last minute questions in the chat.